Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. I'm Kavisha, and I take care of research and development here at Vari Energies. Right. So we'll quickly jump on. I think I'll start with the introduction. How have the market progressed? When we see the entire solar market, we know if someone of you have been in the market since 2014, 2010, we know that the standard cell size or the module size was almost same. The entire industry agreed upon M2. Of course, the initially developed solar cell was of 100 mm, then they quickly moved upon to M0 and M1. But M2 was something where the entire industry had their consign zone, right? After that, very quickly we realized that just by changing the ingot dia, so here this 156.75 mm is your cell size, and this 210 mm is the ingot dia, right? So quickly, just by changing the ingot dia, we got this full square cell, which was of 158.75, which just stayed for almost 6 to 8 months, and that's when the industry started deviating, and we again had this two cell sizes of 161 and 166, right? M6 was something which was intermittent. It stayed for year or so, and then very quickly we had this news of new wafers being developed from one of the cell manufacturers, which was M10 or 210 mm. And just quickly after it, we also got this news that there is one more group which are also developing, or which had also launched M10, which is 182 mm, right? So currently the industry standard is both, of course, M10 and M12. There is a division between M10 and M12, and we do have some overlaps of few industry players being both in M10 and M12, right? We still do not know if the industry would progress towards higher size, but what we think is that M10 and M12 should remain stay in focus for at least quite a few years, right? So, how does multi-bus bar come into picture? That's will yes, exactly. So now, as we start increasing the cell size, what happens is that regular M2, or this is M2 cell, of course, regular M2 cell was a 5 bus bar, right? So the distance between bus bars was 31.2 mm, right? So now what happens is, if you have more distance between these bus bars, so now if you have a cell say of 182 mm for an example, or 210 mm for an example, if we only have this 5 bus bars, the electrons which are generated here, say at this portion, would have to travel a longer distance before they are being collected via this bus bar, right? They travel through small wires to be combined at a bigger wire. The small wires are in technical terms they are known as fingers, and this bigger wires or the thicker wires are known as bus bars, right? Predominantly, what would happen is that if you have a cell which is of 182 or 210 mm, what would happen is the generated electron or the excited electron would have to travel at a much longer distance before it gets collected. And power, as we know, is I square R. The power losses would increase because if your electron have to travel more distance, it faces more resistance, right? So the power loss is directly proportional to the square of length of transmission distance. So all in all, what it means is that more is the distance, more is your power loss, right? In the multi-bus bar, this is an M10 cell, where we see that space between each cell. So each cell means that this cell division, what we are talking about, is being termed as each cell for simplicity. So distance between these cells, if we break up, it will be somewhere close to 18 mm, right? One more advantage is that your the busbar width or busbar thickness is reducing, right? I'll explain this to you in just a few moments, right? Before that, uh, again, we would like to think as a cell manufacturer, right? As a model manufacturer, we just get the cells, we probably encapsulate them, we sandwich them, and we make a module out of it. But when we think or when we change our hats to from module manufacturing to cell manufacturing, that's where we understand and we get to know how we have gone or how we have come to multi-bus bar, right? So I have taken two examples here. On the top right hand side, you should be able to see my pointer, right? We have kept fixed silver consumption, right? So we know that a solar cell utilizes silver paste. It has this metallic grid which needs silver paste. It has silver paste. And with the current increasing prices of silver, first, second, silver being one of the most important and precious metal, we had kept the study around silver. So what we did here on the top right hand was that we kept fixed silver consumption. So we took a cell. This was for M6. We had taken fixed silver consumption and we tried varying the number of bus bars. Right. So what we found out that if we have three bus bars, say for an example in M6, if we keep the number, if we keep the amount of silver fixed, you would have 10.4% of power loss, right? And then there is a sudden exponential going down till I think 9 or 10 bus bars, and then at after a certain level, say after 13 or 14 bus bars, this loss remains constant, right? So what this shows is that if you have a bigger cell, it needs higher bus bar. It needs more number of bus bars to reduce your power loss at a given silver consumption, right? Second, what we did was the finger resistance, what I was talking to you about, the resistance where your electron travels from this small wires to this bigger wire of bus bar. What we did was in order to maintain finger resistance. So now what happens is for any power to transfer or for any electron to travel, it has to overcome certain resistance. And a cell inherently is no different. It's just a electrical uh, entity which is in a smaller size, right? But it still has its internal series and shunt resistance. Okay. So here what we did was we kept or we maintained the same finger resistance, and we tried varying the consumption of silver. So for an example, again taking the same cell size, if you have 4 bus bar, that was benchmarked or earmarked at 100%, and we see that about 9 or 10 bus bars, again this number is saturating. So now for the same cell size, if you have more number of bus bars, right, you have relative consumption of silver paste coming down gradually or significantly after 8 or 9 bus bars, right? So coming to multi-bus bar, the advantages what multi-bus bar offers is that it decrease the metal shading. So now what happens is if you have 4 number of bus bars, right, compared to it, if you have 8 or 9 number of bus bars, for the thickness of this 4 bus bars would be quite huge when you compare to this thickness, the total thickness of 10, 11 or 12 bus bars. First. Second, now because you have more number of wires, say we just take an example that I have a 100-watt peak of power, which is to be collected from 4 wires. Compared to it, if I have 100-watt peak of power, which is to be collected by 10 wires, I would have effective division of current. I would have effective division of electron. I would also have effective, or I would rather term it like that I would have more number of electrons being collected. I would not let the electrons recombine again, right? And that's how you have this increased short circuit current, right? And all in all, because we are keeping the fill factor same or we are even increasing the fill factor, we are maintaining the electrical losses which are series, the resistance, series resistance. That's how we have increase in efficiency, right? That's why you are seeing a more efficiency at probably higher wafer sizes. Let the delta be very small, but still we still see a delta, right? Moving on, again, a few advantages of MPB. I told you in the last slide that the transmission distance decreases significantly, say more than half, when you go from say a 5 bus bar module to 5 bus bar cell, I'm sorry, to a 9 bus bar, 10 bus bar or 12 bus bar cell, right? So here what is happening is that, say for an example, if we have a micro crack which is generated here, the microcrack will propagate through this 31 or 32 mm, right? When you compare it to multi-bus bar, this microcrack will only propagate, say for an example, 18 mm at the max before over jumping the bus bar and going to the next cell piece, right? Or the next part of the cell in the same cell essentially, right? So what happens is that first the micro crack loss or micro crack resistance is effectively improved. One. Second, because I have more number of wires which are collecting this electron which is generated. Say for an example, if I had a crack here, if I have a crack here, all the electrons which are generated here would just go for waste. But if comparing to that, 18 mm and 18 mm, so this is close to 36 mm. If I have this crack here, it will not propagate here. So that means you would have more generation of current, more efficient current collection. All in all, what happens is cell efficiency is improved by 0.4%. And just remember, this is an absolute number. Okay. One more advantage what we have is that we are using circular ribbons. In the normal M2 or M2.5 cell, the busbar tabbing or the busbar or the ribbon or the busbars what people usually use were of rectangular in nature, right? So what happens here is that a large part of light which falls on your busbar will be either reflected back or it will be reflected internally to the glass, right? But then when you have a circular bus bar and when we take a light source, we see that you have enhanced reflection of light. You have enhanced light which is falling in onto the cell. You also have some light which is being reflected back to the glass, but it is also coming in, right? So all in all, what happens is your light falling upon the cell or light effective light which is falling upon the cell increases, right? Let's move ahead. Yes. So now I have a very interesting figure. We had this question from one of our manufacturers, say one of our customers, I'm sorry, saying that, sir, if you have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bus bars, why not just go to 36, 40, 45 bus bars? Let us just keep increasing the bus bar. And I mean, that's how the benefits are, right? So what we did is that we plotted two different losses. We plotted power loss due to series, which is there in this red line, and we plotted power loss due to shadow. Okay, so all in all, the series loss is actually the internal loss, which is or internal resistance that is being offered by the cell, and power loss due to that is your series loss. I'm sorry, and the power loss due to shadow is due to the number of bus bars. So if you continuously keep on increasing the bus bars, say from 14, 15, 19, 20, 25, 30 to 40, what would happen is you are inducing more metal lines on top of your cell, and that's how you're reducing the amount of light which is falling upon to your cell, right? So what we found out is that when you hover around 12 bus bars, so probably 10, 11 to 13 or 14, you have this value minimum, right? Series loss drastically falls down, and it is stagnant, say around at 24 or 25 odd bus bars. But then from 12 bus bar, what we see is that the power loss due to shadow starts increasing, and that's how your total power loss is increasing, right? So the ideal number stays between 10 to 13 or between 9 to 13, right? That's how people have come to 12 bus bar in M12 or and M10 again at 10 bus bar, right? Moving ahead, I have a little animation for you. That's how we see light reutilization. So what happens is that when light falls upon the ribbon or the bus bar, say here most of the light may be reflected back, which you can see in this animation. But then because you have this circular ribbon, there is this reutilization of light, right? And then you have more light falling upon the cell, as I told you earlier. While you have more light falling upon it, one indirect advantage is that you have good IAM. IAM is actually incident angle modifier of any module, and you would input this parameter in the PAN file, or you have a separate report out of it, and I don't need to tell you that. But then what happens is if you have more light being utilized, if you have more light falling upon the module, when you change the incident angle, what happens is that you still have certain amount of light falling upon your cell at separate angles. What we have shown you, I think, say this is 30-degree. When your light falls upon the ribbon at 30 degrees, most of the light is lost here. But then you have almost 80, more than 80 or 90% of the light which is being reutilized. That's how you have this better IAM, right? And moving along, this is my favorite graph. This is from our internal testings where we have got these numbers. We have done quite a few tests. We have done almost all the tests on our module, but this is just a glimpse of it. IC, as we know, has their power bar of 5%, is of course the Pmax degradation. What we saw is that the maximum degradation of our modules was 2%. So that means that let it be any multi-bus bar modules. Of course, our modules have better reliability, but then the entire point is that multi-bus bars, all in all, have a better reliability when you compare it to the regular modules, right? Just a final conclusion on multi-bus bar. With all these advantages being there, it's not only us who is focusing on multi-bus bar. We have this entire industry being shifted to, of course, the higher higher wafer sizes, which is M10 and M12. And that's how you have, again, in parallel, we have shown you this multi-bus bar where anything above 6 or 8, anything above 6 bus bar is termed as multi-bus bar. And you see that probably in 1 or 2 years, you would only have 5 bus bars hovering at around 10 or 12%. Everything would be above 6 bus bars and all, right? So all in all, we have the entire market which is being shifting to multi-bus bars, right? Now let us very quickly go on to bifacial module. We are focusing on bifacial module because of two reasons, right? A multi-bus bar module can be made both in monofacial and bifacial. Okay, uh, and it's no brainer that the share of bifacial module would be increasing by the end of the decade to more than 60%. One specific reason for that is that the module prices between mono PERC and bifacial PERC are coming on to very steep margins, and probably we see that within 5 or 7 years down the line, you would practically see no difference between the cost of bifacial and monofacial module, right? So for bifacial modules, there are certain things what we need to know. First is how do we flash this module at, right? For monofacial module, we have a set conditions HTC which are defined by IEC as at irradiance of 1000, temperature of 25, and nmass of 1.5. But for bifacial module, as this module generates light, or I'm sorry, as this module generates power from both the side, you have two specific methods which are mentioned in IC 60904-1-2, which is still under the draft stage, right? You can have single side illumination, okay, where you have a non-reflective background, you increase your irradiance, right? Or you can have dual irradiation with standard irradiance being on the top and decreased irradiance being on the bottom, and you can flash your module, right? Next, we would have 2 or 3 design parameters very quickly, because we get this questions a lot of times when we interact with the customer, saying that what is albedo and all that, right? So albedo is basically the reflectivity of your ground, the amount of light falling upon it, reflected back divided by amount of light falling upon it, is just the ratio of your albedo, right? So for a bifacial module, it generates power from both front and the back end, but it very specifically depends on the albedo. So if your albedo of the ground is higher, you would have higher reflectivity of the light, and higher would be your output of bifacial modules, right? Here you have different albedos of different surfaces. This is from an industrial standard. I think, yeah, this is from PVSys, and you can go to the graph. You can go there and look at the values. Uh, Next, and probably one of the most important things, is the bifaciality of your module, right? And this holds good for all your M6, M10, M12 modules, right? The point of bringing bifaciality here is that we should know what is exactly bifaciality, right? Bifaciality is, say for an example, if you have 100 units of light falling upon front, and we ignore the albedo, we take ideal condition, and we have 100 units of light falling on the back, right? But your bifacial module, inherently, it has a property. Say for an example, if 100 units are falling on the front, it may be able to generate 98 units, or let's take for an example, simplicity, 50 units. Your backside would not generate exactly the same. Your backside would generate close to 40 units or 30 units or 45 units, right? So this ratio of this back power, which is in this small thunderstorm, and the front power, which is in this biggest thunderstorm, is actually known as a bifaciality, right? And this bifaciality, let me remind you, this bifaciality is not a limitation of your solar module, but this is an inherent property of your cell itself, right? So if you're using PERC cells, which most of the manufacturers right now are, you would have your bifaciality above 70%. But then if we shift to HJT, what Abhimanyu was talking about early in the presentation, you would have your bifaciality more than 90%, right? So this is where the advantage comes in. This is where the advantage kicks in of the technology. Other than that, you have quite a few things. You have GCR, you have height, you have tilt angle, you have again the albedo. Very quickly, we'll move on to the graphs for bifacial modules. Just last 1 or 2 slides, right? So this is a simulation study what we had done. This is already there on our website. You can refer to it. What we had done here is that we had varied the GCR. So this is something what we did for a 1 megawatt power plant. We varied the GCR and we plotted bifacial gains, right? So GCR is basically the ratio, is the ground coverage ratio, which is the ratio of this module length to interrow spacing. What we see is that at 10% GCRs, for an example, if you have your modules very sparsely populated in the entire ground, you would have very high bifacial gain. But let me remind you, for a 1 megawatt power plant, you need a huge area of land, right? And if your GCR goes below 60%, say around 65, 70, or 80%, say for an example, you'd have interrow shading, right? So as a model manufacturer, we always recommend to have a GCR between 40 to 50%, right? Depending, of course, on your power plant layout, to have optimal bifacial gain, and of course to cater into account the land cost, right? And last is the height. For any module, say M6, M10, or M12, or any taking any module into picture, one more important factor is what is your height, or how good your understructure is, right? If you have a heavy module, say for an example an M10 module, if you're keeping it at a 2.5 meter of height, you would obviously have a bifacial gain of 12%. But higher the height, higher is the wind load, and more sturdy is the understructure required, right? So there is a balance, or there is a face-off between your bifacial gain, your height, and the cost of your MMS, of course. So as a module manufacturer, this is just a suggestion, and we tell you to keep your height between 1.2 to 1.3 meters. That's how you have good bifacial gain somewhere between 9% and 10%, right? And you're also not off, you're also offsetting the cost of sturdy MMS, right? But of course, this is location dependent. We had taken this for a specific location, right? Okay, so moving on. I think this is a graph which you all know. I don't need to explain you much. Higher is the albedo of your bifacial PV module. You take any module, you have higher albedo, you have higher bifacial gains. Ideally, you can get a bifacial gain up to 30%, which is probably recorded, and which is also reported. But on practical terms, we see bifacial gains being saturated at around 26, 27 odd percentage, right? Very quickly, we are coming to the last part, and as I told you, we would give more time to Q&A. We would very quickly go on to the cost analysis. Okay, so when we go to higher power modules, what are the advantages? So the first and foremost advantage is that, say for an example, a M2.5 or M6 module, it has a power offering of say 445, 450 watts. When you compare it to M10 and M12, M12 is what, M10 is what, 440 watts or, and M12 is currently 660 watts plus. So for a given number of power plant, or for a given power plant or with a fixed capacity, the number of module reduces, right? So lower the number of modules, you have lower the transportation cost, and we can pack more number of modules in a single 40 high cube container, right? Lesser the number of modules, you have to worry about, you have to worry a little less about O&M, say cleaning, checking the modules frequently for some bird shit or some other dust deposition, right? Fourth, you have lower the number of MMS. The number of MMS, in the sense, the absolute number of MMS may decrease, right? You may also have low number of inverter, and at the end, when we talk about installations, because you have low number of modules, you may require less less number of installation. So for an example, if you are carrying say 400 odd modules for 1 megawatt, you would carry only 350 or 370 odd modules, and that's how you can save on installation cost, right? uh, so just I think final few slides on commercials. What we did was we had taken a 50 megawatt plant. We had simulated this in Bhadla, Rajasthan. This is comparison. M6 was obviously taken as the base here, and we had done a comparison between M6 and M10. And next slide is M10, M6 and M12. I'm sorry. We see that when you compare M6 with M10, number of modules are decreased by 16%. We have, of course, the land usage, which is reduced by 9.3%, because you have less number of area being occupied by the number of modules, right? This is again directly, of course, related to the number of the cabling, what we use, number of trenches what are being used. That's why you see that, you know, the land cost is exactly not reduced to 16%, but the land cost is reduced by 10%, around 9.5%. We have MMS cost being reduced to 2.6 or close to 3%, right? Cabling, as I told you, decreases by somewhere around 4.5%. Two predominant things, what or two key takeaways from here is that the pile foundation cost, or the pile what you use to be inserted in the ground, is decreasing by 4.1%, right? And the civil works, right? So all in all, the civil works are decreased by 7.1%, right? When we compare M6 to M12, you see a higher number of modules reduction. We have 31% reduction in number of modules. Again, directly proportional to that is the land use, which is reduced by 20%, right? MMS and the cable cost almost remains the same, or number of, or absolute percentage reduction is not so much, right? But then when we talk about pile foundation cost and the civil works cost, you have absolute reduction here. We can see that this reduction is from 4.1% to 16%, and again civil works is being reduced from 7.1% to 8.9%, right? But then when we quickly go to LCOE, what we see or what we identified is that when we compare M6, say for an example, with, so what we have done here is that we have compared M6 with M10 monofacial and M12, and M10 and M12 monofacial, and M10 and M12 bifacial, right? What we found out is that when we compare it with M6, or when we put M6 as 100%, we found out that M10 and M12, there was just a marginal difference at both monofacial level and at bifacial level, right? So this is because of the reason that this was specifically simulated for Badla, Rajasthan, say for an example, where you do not have such heavy wind loads. You may require sturdy understructures or sturdy piling, but all in all, the energy generation, say for an example, because it was a 50 megawatt power plant, you have the same technology, which is monoPERC, the energy generation remained same. That's how we saw that LCOE was, say for an example, at monofacial level, the delta was not so much, it was only 0.6%. For a bifacial power plant, because you have slight increase in the energy generation, you have this delta, which is from the delta difference here is 1.1%, right? So all we want to tell you in the conclusion is that you as an end customer should always make a right choice. What we can understand, or what we understood from this PPT, is that a multi-bus bar module has lower series resistance, it has better shunt resistance, it has better IAM. So that's how you have lower module operating temperature, right? So for any module, if it has a lower operating temperature, you of course have high generation, right? We also have better low light performance, and the reason, of course, being that this has better current collection at low light, right? We already showed you that you have enhanced module reliability due to multi-bus bar. We have better current collection. LCOE, when you compare it with M6, of course, you have a good LCOE, and this all in all gives you better ROI. When you talk about bifacial modules, you of course have even better ROI, right? Just the light slide, and I think I'll open it to Q&A, and we'll take questions from your end, right? These are our offerings. We would be offering personally both M10 and M12 because we believe that it's, of course, to the end customer, depending on his needs, his requirements, his simulations, what he wants. So we would be offering both M10 and M12. At M10, predominantly, we would be offering 144 cells, and you can see our power class. The highest power bin is between 535, 540, 545. At M12, we would be offering both 120 and 132 cells, which is the industrial standard. And here the power output would be 600 at 120 and 660 plus for 660, 665, 660 plus for 132 cells. Right. So I think we are coming to the end of our presentation. We would start taking questions.